Part 31. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 301. That's right, Wang Ling's bad idea is to dispatch terrorist robots on a large scale. General Li Wiki had already used this method on the last battlefield, and the effect was very obvious. The Allies were obviously furious at this method. The scale of this decisive battlefield is so huge that relying on only one or two coalition bases is obviously not enough. However, these two bases directly dispatched terrorist robots on a large scale. To put it bluntly, it was just a teaser. The other coalition commanders were not stupid. After receiving the signal, their eyes lit up and they hurriedly cooperated. Each one was producing large quantities of them. Each base produced at least 10 terrifying robots in one day, and then they poured out of the base and were distributed to every corner of the battlefield. When it comes to the role of this terrifying robot, it can be either big or small. After all, this thing's armor and health are too weak and can be easily blown up, but its mobility is very strong, and its unique attack method, it's also a huge headache. A single terrorist robot is okay and can't cause much damage, but when there are more of them, it's completely different if quantitative changes lead to qualitative changes. After all the terrorist robots were in place, many of them had already discovered their attack targets. As a result, all the time travel mining vehicles mining in the mines between the two armies were all attacked by the terrorist robots. Yes, all. Some were drilled by terrorist robots during mining, and others were targeted on the way to the mine, causing destruction from the inside out and trembling and blood loss along the way. Fortunately, this mining truck has thick skin and does not lose blood very quickly. Even a single movement through time and space can throw off the terrifying robot. However, after returning to the base and transporting the ore, we can't just go on strike, right? After all, the number of mines behind the base is small. If you want to ensure sufficient war funds, you must break into the mines between the two armies to mine minerals, but there are already terrorist robots waiting there. It's time for a face-to-face encounter. So he got in again, and there was another destruction from the inside out. Once or twice, the overtime minecart will not be affected much, but if it happens too many times, no matter how hard the minecart is, it will be finished. And not only the minecarts, but also the Allied troops who went out to attack the coalition-armed mining carts were also devastated. The tank squad was directly invaded by a large number of terrorist robots, and the infantry squad was directly attacked by the roaring terrorist robots. Fall. Not only that, even the offensive troops organized by the Allied forces were attacked by terrorist robots along the way. As a result, when they arrived at the battlefield, the number of tanks in the army was directly reduced by 40%, and the light prism tanks at the rear were completely destroyed. The number of soldiers has also dropped by 20%. Such losses occurred during the advance, which also had a considerable impact on the Allied forces. Their morale was low. As a result, they were defeated shortly after the war began. They were all wiped out by several charges from the coalition forces. After this back and forth, the Allied forces hated these terrifying robots and finally began to send troops to exterminate them. The team of tanks started dispatching, and there were quite a few of them. It was okay to encounter the lone terrifying robot at the beginning. After all, it was fragile and was destroyed in just one encounter. But then, this group of tanks knew what it meant to beat a snake with a stick. They encountered more and more terrifying robots, and managed to destroy a few. However, the remaining terrifying robots took the opportunity to get into these tanks. Another destruction from the inside out. These tanks do not have the ability to move across time and space like mining vehicles. If they are invaded by terrorist robots, they must either rush into the maintenance factory or wait to die. As for being so ruthless that other tanks blew themselves up, the Allies didn't have the guts yet. As a result, these terror robots that successfully invaded directly became a plague and nightmare for the tank team. When one exploded, the other tanks had no time to react. The exposed terror robot found the next target and quickly got in. In the end, the terrorist robots did not lose too much, but all the tanks that came to destroy them were attacked and wiped out. This is simply a disaster. If you zoom in on the electronic map and look at it, you will see that on the battlefield, especially between the two armies, there is a terrorist robot lying there almost every other boundary. The mining area is the hardest hit area, and there are always people. Then one or two were waiting for the Allied mining vehicles there, which simply made the Allies miserable. As the promoter of this phenomenon, Wang Ling looked at the electronic map from the base and smiled so much that he was gloating about his misfortune. During the game, when he attacked the coalition forces camp, it was difficult to say which type of troops he was most afraid of. In short, the most annoying thing was this terrifying robot. Now, he has exaggerated and magnified this trouble, but it is the Allies who bear this trouble. Previously, the Allied forces had united and used large-scale fighter jets to bomb mining trucks. Now Wang Ling had pulled this trick. The Allied forces commander was dumbfounded by the outcome of this battle. The effect of this was immediate. Ever since all the terrorist robots were dispatched, the Allies were in a bit of a mess. They seemed to have been fed up. For several days, no more fighter groups were sent to bomb the mining trucks. Taking advantage of this time, base number 15 and number 16 also accelerated its development. Magnetic storm coils were erected one after another in the base. Large walls surrounding the entire city were also built, and the number of various tanks and vehicles also increased. A group has been added, and even engineers have begun to target the sea and want to build shipyards. At this stage of development, except for the short time and poor foundation of these two bases, their defensive strength is no worse than other bases. Therefore, the teams that helped to garrison met and negotiated, and finally left the two friends Xia Tian and Zhang Yang to lead the team to continue garrisoning, while the other teams embarked on the return journey one after another. After all, there are never enough manpower on this battlefield. Teams from other bases can help guard for a while, but they cannot stay here forever. Fortunately, the base already has sufficient defense capabilities, so it will not be stretched due to their departure. After seeing Wang Ling farewell for a while, they gradually drifted away. After returning to the city, Wang Ling originally wanted to continue to garrison, but he received a temporary order asking him to go to the tank factory. Wang Ling didn't think much, left the wolf team behind, and came outside the chariot factory alone, only to find that Zhao Ping Wang was already waiting here. "Brother Zhao, why do you have to come here?" Wang Ling asked curiously. But King Xiaoping smiled and said, "Now the base already has basic defense capabilities, so the general ordered the production of some new weapons. You guys don't know what kind of plugins you have opened. You know both the enemy and us well, so I specifically asked you to come here and judge." Wang Ling also didn't expect that he would become a commentator invisibly. But since there are new weapons, it would be good to take a look. With this idea in mind, Wang Ling didn't ask any more questions. After waiting for a while, the door of the tank factory finally opened, and a unique-looking vehicle, carrying a huge missile on its back, slowly drove out. When Wang Ling saw this thing, he was a little shocked on the spot. V3 rocket. Different dimension. Red alert world. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 302. Isn't it? The new weapon Xiaoping mentioned is actually the special unit vehicle unique to the coalition forces in the game, the V3 rocket car. It stands to reason that there are new weapons in the base. As a member of the base, Wang Ling should be happy, but in fact, after recognizing this thing, Wang Ling was a little bit dumbfounded. "It's amazing, you really know this thing." On the side, Xiaoping Wang glared at him, with some surprise in his tone. "Then please tell me the use of this thing." Wang Ling's uniqueness on the battlefield has long been shown, and now he did not deliberately hide anything. He stepped forward and patted the body of the V3 rocket, and explained, the V-3 rocket is extremely powerful and has an extremely long range. It is not even better than the giant rocket. The range and power of the cannon are inferior, and the powerful siege weapons can also be used to support operations, and the effects are quite good. Oh, from what you said, this V-3 rocket is not bad, but what was going on with your expression just now? Xiaoping Wang asked curiously. Wang Ling smiled and shook his head and explained, what I just said are advantages. This thing has more disadvantages than advantages. For example, first of all, Wang Ling patted the car body and replied, the armor of the V-3 rocket car is very poor and can be easily blown up. Moreover, because it is carrying such a dangerous missile, it moves very slowly. It is surprisingly slow. Compared with the Apocalypse tank is even slower. King Xiaoping nodded. They had actually seen these basic information when they obtained this technology. Wang Ling continued, in addition, this V-3 rocket cannot move and attack. It can only be fixed and launch rocket missiles towards a fixed place. Because the rocket's flight speed is too slow, it cannot hit moving targets unless it can predict the enemy's route movements and launch rockets at the corresponding position in advance. Because of this restriction, V-3 rockets cannot be used as the main offensive force. If V-3 rockets go out, they must be protected by powerful troops, otherwise it will be very difficult easily killed. After hearing this, King Xiaoping frowned slightly, feeling a little dissatisfied with the limitations of the V-3 rocket. Wang Ling paused for a moment, and finally said, also, the rocket missiles launched by this thing have two obvious targets and slow flying speed. They are usually intercepted by Allied anti-aircraft missiles midway. If you want to break through this for layer interception, we can only win by quantity, otherwise a small number of V-3 rockets will be useless. After spending such a long time, I finally went through all the advantages and disadvantages of this V-3 rocket. The overall evaluation can be considered fair. Xiaoping Wang scratched his head as if he had a headache. This new weapon is very powerful, but it is also too restrictive and difficult to command. Having said this, King Xiaoping suddenly turned to look at Wang Ling and gave a sly smile, you are cunning with your troops and you know the V-3 rocket so well. I will report it to the general and just assign it to your wolf squad. Hey, this gift is not light. Wang Ling showed some surprise, but then said with a grimace, it's okay to give it to us, but brother Zhao, I just said that if the quantity of this thing is small, it is useless. I will give it to you, it's a waste, but it won't have much effect. Since it has been decided to allocate it to us, why not give more? I haven't even handed this over to you yet, but you're already raising the price. Prince Xiaoping rolled his eyes at Wang Ling and asked angrily, tell me, how many cars do you want? 10 cars. The lion is opening his mouth. 10. Is that too much? That's right. The base is developing rapidly and the funds are consumed too much. It's not the right time to throw in 10 V-3 rockets at once. Well, then 9 will be enough. Bah! Who did you learn to be so thick-skinned? Come on, stop bargaining. General, will ask for your permission. It shouldn't be a problem to give you 5 cars. 5 cars. Let's make do. After some talk, 5 V-3 rockets were obtained. It was worth the trip. I have also seen the V-3 rocket, introduced the specific advantages and disadvantages, and even finalized the allocated quantity. In the remaining time, there will be nothing to worry about. Wang Ling. After saying hello to Xiaoping Wang, Wang Ling returned to the Wolf Team station and calmed down to look at the electronic map. In the past few days, the area between the two armies can be said to have been disturbed by the army of terrifying robots. However, it is difficult for ordinary troops to completely eliminate these annoying things. The Allied forces are now very angry. However, the Allied forces will not just watch the terrorist robots run wild. After several days of stalemate, today they finally dispatched a suitable unit, rocket pilots. Terrorist robots have strong maneuverability and unique attack methods, but they have no air defense capabilities. The Allies took advantage of this and sent 3 rocket pilots to almost every base. They are now clearing the map of terrorist robots. Wang as Ling watched, the number of these terrifying robots had dropped by half. Although the cost of a terrorist robot is not high, it cannot support such a large number. Wang Ling did not want to watch their terrorist robots being wiped out, so he quickly contacted Xiaoping Wang and asked all the remaining terrorist robots in the 2 bases to be destroyed. Returned to base. The terrorist robots were gathered in a large area, and 9 rocket pilots were actually chasing them. However, as soon as they entered the city, they were all shot down by the stationed anti-aircraft crawlers. After suffering this loss, the other rocket pilots consciously ignored the terrifying robots in these 2 bases. However, the remaining ones were being chased and beaten by numerous rocket pilots, and their numbers were rapidly reduced. When the number reached a certain level, the coalition base finally couldn't stand it anymore and sent several anti-aircraft crawler vehicles to support them, and finally managed to keep 4 terrorist robots behind. Protected by those anti-aircraft crawlers, the rocket pilots did not kill them all. After all, these 4 terrifying robots could not make any waves on this huge battlefield. After the cleanup was completed, Wang Ling had no idea of sending out the base's terror robots anymore. The craziness this time was, to put it bluntly, just to retaliate against the Allied forces for using fighter jets to bomb the mine carts. However, after the terror robots made such a fuss, the Allied fighter jets were obviously much more honest. If there is another air attack on mine carts, these terrifying robots will probably go out to cause trouble, and they will be even crazier than this time. After the incident involving the terrorist robots ended, the battlefield calmed down significantly, but behind the scenes, the bases of all parties were in turmoil. Including base number 15, they were working hard to build V-3 rockets this afternoon. Finally, before Wang Ling took a break in the evening, he successfully built 4 more rockets and drove them out in a mighty manner. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 303. Including the first one that left the factory, there are now 5 V-3 rockets in the Allied Forces Base number 15. And according to what was agreed in advance, these 5 V-3 rockets were assigned to the Wolf Squad. Seeing that all the V-3 rockets were completed, Wang Ling was secretly excited. Without even waiting for Xiaoping Guang's radio notification, he ran to the chariot factory and looked at the 5 V-3 rockets. Haha. Laughed for a while. You're very positive. We just finished giving birth and I'm already here before I even have time to notify you. Suddenly there was a complaint from behind. When I looked back, I saw that it was Rowski who was walking over. Wang Ling had long been used to being picky about the commander's deputy. He just smiled and said, "Getting new weapons, things from the Wolf Squad, this is not positive, what else can I be positive about?" Wang Ling said this so naturally and so thick-skinned, but it was difficult for Rowski to refute. He was stuck for a while before glaring back, "Can't you be more modest?" "What is modesty? Can you eat it?" Well, Rovitsky simply stopped being stubborn with him, shook his head, crossed his arms and looked at the V-3 rockets, and said, "Old Zhao has already told us the advantages and disadvantages of this thing this afternoon. I really don't know where you know so much. If the Allies didn't know this technology, I would have suspected you were a spy." Wang Ling hurriedly shook his head and said with a rogue face, "Sir, I won't take the blame. I even raised a police dog back then. Which spy do you think would dare to do such a thing?" Rovitsky rolled his eyes and refused to answer the question. Instead, he continued, "According to what you said, this thing is too limited to be commanded and used, so the base will only produce 5 of them for the time being and leave them to you. The wolf team will use it. If the effectiveness of this thing can be brought into play, the number may be increased in the future. Okay, I won't talk about the extra stuff, just take the V3 rocket back. Yes, sir, Wang Ling said with a smile on his face, and after a military salute, he quickly retreated with the V3 rocket, as if he was afraid that Rovitsky would be embarrassed. After returning to the Wolf Team station, everyone in the Wolf Team saw the V3 rocket, and they all became excited for a while. Hey, Captain, this thing looks so majestic. How destructive is such a big rocket? The styling is quite cool. Captain, does this thing belong to our Wolf Team? Due to the nature of soldiers, the members of the Wolf Squad were very interested in new weapons. Many of them even retreated from the building and touched the bodies of several V3 rockets. Wang Ling rubbed his nose and said with a smile, "Of course, he is not from our Wolf Team. Why should I bring him back? However, don't be too happy. The limitations of this thing are not small. If it is not used properly, it's difficult to use." Regarding his own troops, Wang Ling did not need to be stingy with the information he knew. He immediately told all the advantages and disadvantages of the V3 rocket. After listening to this, the enthusiasm of the Wolf Team for the V3 rocket suddenly dropped. Phew! This thing is really difficult to use. Wang Ling didn't care what they thought. Since the V3 rocket had been obtained, it would naturally have to be put to use. Although I am very familiar with this thing in the game, in the red alert world, it is difficult to judge the time and distance. Then Wang Ling asked the 5 V3 rockets to launch the rockets at an open space, and he used the electronic video estimated the maximum range of this thing and the specific time from the order to the rocket explosion. With these basic data, it will be more convenient to use in the future. After finishing all this work, Wang Ling took one last look at the electronic map and confirmed that there were no major actions on the part of the Allies. Then he felt relieved, arranged his shift time, and went to bed. As usual, after lying down, Wang Ling returned to the real world and rested for a day. In the real world, there is generally not much else going on. However, Wang Ling was a little strange. After he taught those rough Ians a lesson last time, he hadn't seen the clown Zhenlong for a long time. Out of curiosity, Wang Ling inquired about it and found out that this guy had dropped out of school. It seems that what happened last time really hit him hard, and he doesn't dare to stay in school anymore. When Wang Ling heard the news, he clicked his tongue and shook his head, somewhat dissatisfied with what this guy was doing. However, Wang Ling didn't care at all where Zhenlong went. He stayed there until night, and then entered the red alert world again. Wang Ling had spent more than one night on this decisive battlefield. Except for being woken up by the air raid, he slept peacefully at other times. However, the war situation on the battlefield was unpredictable and it was impossible to remain stable forever. Wang Ling was woken up again when he slept until midnight tonight. What sounded this time was not the base's alarm, but Zhao Pingguang's urgent voice on the radio, "Don't even sleep, get up quickly, the Allies are making big moves again, get up quickly." He was sleeping in a daze when he suddenly heard these words. Wang Ling was immediately startled. After opening his eyes, he almost subconsciously jumped up, blinked, and after calming down, he hurriedly checked the electronic map. First, I looked at the city area and didn't find any blue light spots. The base and garrison were not in any condition, so I felt a little relieved. Then he zoomed in on the map, zoomed in, and finally discovered that on the battlefield, a patch of light had converged, and was now heading towards their city. Pulling in the map, and showing the electronic video state, Wang Ling suddenly turned black. I was so embarrassed, the Allies actually dispatched 30 light tanks at once. What are the Allies doing over there? Are you crazy? At this moment, Wang Ling was no longer calm. 30 light prism tanks, What is this concept? If not stopped, this is enough to overthrow one or even several coalition bases. No wonder King Xiaoping is so anxious and wants to wake everyone up in the middle of the night. What he is about to face now is a life and death challenge. The other captains had obviously watched the 30 light prism tanks from the electronic video, and now they were all impatient. Hu Ben's voice immediately came from the radio, "These damn allies are determined to destroy them. Did you kill us?" King Xiaoping also sighed. The 3 teams of reinforcements had just left during the day, so they combined 6 allied bases to send out so many light tanks. The timing was really good, and they really took good care of us. At night, the commander and the 2 deputies also took turns to rest, but now that such a big thing had happened, the other 2 obviously couldn't sleep anymore. Then Rovika's voice came from the radio, "Hiss, are the allies about to launch a big move? The Wolf Squad killed one of their bases before, so it seems like they are really interested." Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 304. Isn't it? From the very beginning, it was Wang Ling who led the Wolf Squad to destroy one of their bases. Later, he united with several supporting squads to wipe out all the Allied encirclement and suppression troops. Only then did the senior officials of the Allied forces speak out. The point is take care of the coalition base on the 15th and 16th. There had always been 5 strong reinforcements guarding the place before, and the Allies did not act rashly. They only dispatched a group of fighter jets to harass the area on a large scale. Afterwards, they were seriously injured by Wang Ling's attack. Now, although these 2 bases have gradually developed, 3 of the 5 major reinforcements have withdrawn. The overall defense strength here is not even as good as before. The Allies seized this opportunity, combined the 6 bases, and dispatched a total of 310 light prism tanks. This thing has an extremely long range and huge destructive power. Usually during a battle, Wang Ling has to find a way to kill this thing in advance in order to stabilize the battle situation. But now it's better, there are 30 cars. A single prism tank has no advantages. Any unleveled Rhino tank can kill it. But if these 30 tanks are gathered together, it will be terrifying. Even a Rhino tank may not be able to get close to them. Even the Apocalypse tank, it's hard to resist. It seems that the Allied forces can't wait any longer and want to get rid of us as soon as possible. At the tense moment, Major General Li Wiki finally spoke, "Don't worry too much for now." Fortunately, Xiao Zhao discovered it early and the group of light tanks are still on the road. We have a long time to arrange a response strategy. You can also tell us, is there any good way to deal with this crisis? After all, the response was not good, but it was going to be destroyed. Even Major General Li Wiki did not dare to make a hasty decision for a while. He could only brainstorm a safe response plan temporarily. 30 light prism tanks, this is a big deal for the Allies. In my opinion, we will just gather all the tanks and fight them to the death, New Team Captain Bizor said in a loud voice. But Xiang Dingtian, the leader of the elephant team, slapped him to death, "Stop your bad temper and keep fighting. Don't mention that we may not win. Even if we win, our losses will be too heavy. Then what do you think we should do? Contact reinforcements from other bases, rescue those who must be attacked by the enemy, and directly attack the Allied base to force these light tanks to turn back." Is it possible? Hu Ben also came up with an idea. But General Luo Er denied it flatly. "No, look at the electronic map. These 30 light tanks were collected from 6 Allied bases. On average, only 5 tanks were produced per one. Although the cost of this thing is definitely not low, but 5 light prism tanks are not worth mentioning to the current Allied forces. The defense power inside their base has not wavered at all. If we send troops to attack at this time, let alone the light prism tanks that cannot be lured back, even we the reinforcements requested will also be in trouble. After all, The Allied force bases on the 15th and 16th were pieced together for development. Naturally, this radio also has a frequency shared by the two bases. In addition, several other captains also came up with several ideas in succession, but in the end they were shot to death one by one. The scene was somewhat stalemate for a while. Not long after, Chen Tong finally spoke, "If we stick to it, we won't have much advantage. The range of the prism tank is too long. In my opinion, it's better to send troops in advance and kill them halfway." Wang Ling's eyes lit up after hearing this, but the question came next. The proposal is good, but the question is what kind of troops can be sent? It is difficult for ordinary troops to get close to them. It would be best to have an air force in this situation, but we haven't yet developed an air force. Isn't it right? If Wang Ling had even 5 rocket pilots under his command, he would be confident that those light tanks that were fighting every minute would not be able to take care of themselves. But the problem is, the coalition forces don't have that technology. Chen Tong pondered for a while, and then said, "According to the past habits of the Allied forces, the troops will only move forward single-mindedly during the march. Unless we harass the troops and hit them, they will pay attention. These light tanks, maybe it's also of this nature. No, it's not a gamble. If there are 30 light tanks and they drive all the way and fire, then the troops we send will not be enough to fight them." Shaking his head, Wang Ling expressed his worries. When the stalemate reached this point, Sun Chiming also came up with an idea. "I think Brother Chen's idea is worth a try, but Brother Wang's concerns are not unreasonable." "Well, didn't we recover a batch of terrorist robots in our base? Send a few, just try it out in Taiwan." "Yes, you can try it. That's okay. If those light prism tanks don't respond, then we can just send a group of rhinoceros tanks and destroy them halfway." This suggestion was finally recognized by all the captains, and the commanders of the two bases finally adopted this approach. Each of them sent a terrifying robot and rushed towards the batch of light tanks at extremely fast speeds. After all, it involves the security of the two bases. Now, everyone in the two bases who has the right to view the electronic map is paying attention to this matter. The remaining 2 supporting army units had also been awakened long ago, and now they were each watching the electronic map. The prism tank is extremely powerful and has an extremely long range, but the tank moves very slowly and is only halfway through its journey. However, the terrifying robots were very fast, and the two sides moved towards each other, and finally came into contact not long after. Many people are looking forward to the fact that these 2 terrifying robots can successfully invade the light tank, so that things will be easier to handle. Swish. Boom. However, contrary to expectations, the habits of the Allied forces on the decisive battlefield may have changed a lot. This group of light tanks were always on guard as they advanced. The 2 terrifying robots just broke into their range. The 2 elite light prism tanks stopped immediately and fired light prism rays together. The 2 terrifying robots were destroyed almost at the same time. Hiss. It's over, these bastards are too vigilant, there's no way they can make a surprise attack midway. They are specifically giving real-time command, and they are determined to destroy us. What should we do? Are we really going to gather all the tanks and have a fierce battle? If there is no other way, maybe this is the only way to do it. As the 2 terrorist robots exploded, the 2 major coalition bases suddenly erupted in an uproar. The vigilance of the light tank group was far greater than they expected, and the previously discussed plan could not be implemented at all. Just when the base was getting impatient, this group of light tanks was still driving straight in, rushing towards the city with great momentum. Soon after, they arrived at a mining area, and by chance, there was an armed mining vehicle mining ore there. Originally, this group of light prism tanks could continue to drive. The armed mining vehicles had a limited range and could not touch them. However, these light prism tanks stopped temporarily and focused their fire on the armed mining vehicle. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 305. Swish swish swish. Swish swish swish. Boom. This group of light tanks can really be said to kill gods when gods block them, and kill Buddha when Buddha blocks them. They are so overbearing. The armed mining truck did not actively provoke them at all. Just because it was within their shooting range, the group of light prism tanks collectively opened fire on the mining truck. 30 light prism tanks and 30 light prism rays all blasted towards an armed mining vehicle. This scene was completely shocking. Large swaths of light almost illuminated the entire world, bringing endless destructive momentum. However, these more than 30 light prism tanks came from 6 allied bases after all. Although there were commanders commanding them in real time, the cooperation between them was not very tacit. The 30 light prism rays were not fired at one go, but it is divided into several stages, first and last. But even so, the power was enough to shock everyone's attention. The armor and life of the coalition's armed mining vehicle were no worse than those of the Apocalypse tank, but under this light beam, it only lasted a few seconds. In just one breath, he was completely blown away. Looking at the fragments of the minecart that flew up and then fell to the ground and rolled on the ground for several weeks, everyone in the base on the 15th and 16th felt their hearts skip a beat, and a strong sense of helplessness arose spontaneously. With such terrifying power, if all the tanks they have on hand are destroyed, can they stop it? Armed mining vehicles appear so fragile under such a level of attack, and the Apocalypse tanks may not even be able to get close to those light tanks. General, let's call for help quickly. This is really scary, Qin Ming's voice came from the radio. But General Luo Er replied, it's too late, the Allied forces are coming fiercely, and the reinforcements have no time to rescue. This crisis can only rely on us. But two generals. Qin Ming wanted to say something else, but Wang Ling interrupted, 30 light prism tanks, ordinary blocking, can't block their light prism rays at all, and the reinforcements can't come to rescue in time, so I have an idea, want to try it? Oh. Hearing what Wang Ling said, General Li Wiki and General Luo Er's eyes lit up. This Wang Ling has too many clever ideas on the battlefield and has repeatedly created miracles. Now he has another idea during this crisis. This may be a turnaround for the entire base. What do you think, Major General Li Wiki asked quickly. But Wang Ling frowned and spoke faster, there is no time to elaborate, the light prism tanks are not far away from us. Two generals, the direction of these 30 light prism tanks happens to be where our wolf squad is stationed. We need to send all the tanks on standby to this place quickly. If my method doesn't work, we have to be prepared for a deadly battle. Good. At this moment, both commanders chose to believe Wang Ling. After all, there was no other good solution now. As a result, under orders one after another, all the Rhino tanks and Apocalypse tanks stationed in the base were all concentrated at the Wolf Team station to prevent any unexpected events. As for the infantry and anti-aircraft tracked vehicles, they were of no use at all in this situation and simply stayed at their respective stations. While these tanks were moving, the Wolf squad was not idle either. They evacuated the infantry a certain distance, put the tanks in front, and then dispatched 5v3 rocket cars alone. That's right, Wang Ling's plan this time mainly relies on these 5v3 rocket cars. Unexpectedly, he just bought them not long ago, and now they are put to use. It's really a good use of everything. The V3 rocket car and the Prism tank are very slow, but after all, the distance between them is not too far, and they are moving in the same direction, so the distance is naturally getting shorter and shorter. When it was short enough, the 5v3 rocket cars suddenly stopped. Then Wang Ling marked several locations on the electronic map and asked the 5v3 rocket cars to fire forcefully. Since the V3 rocket car was produced at the base, this is the first time it has been put into actual combat. This V-3 rocket car has too many limitations, and the requirements for strategy and command are too high. It is usually difficult to exert its effectiveness. Other bases have naturally produced it, but because of this limitation, it is rarely used. Later, it was replaced. It is rarely produced, so these two bases are relatively unfamiliar with V-3 rockets. Now, it is the first time for most people in the base to see the battle of the V-3 rocket car, and it is still a battle related to the survival of the base. Everyone is paying attention to the battle situation here. Under everyone's attention, these 5 V-3 rocket cars were seen slowly raising their rockets and aiming at the designated target. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Following the loud noises of several flame jets, the huge rocket missile left the car body and drew an extremely high parabola in the air, leaving flames and gunpowder smoke caused by the rocket launch along the way. The speed of this rocket is not very fast, but it seems so unstoppable when flying, like a reminder falling from the sky. The location designated by Wang Ling had been calculated in advance. With the speed of the light prism tank, it would reach this place when it fell. Sure enough, when these 5 rockets fell in a furious manner, the army of light prism tanks had just moved there. As a result, they were hit by 5 V-3 rockets. 3 light prism tanks were directly exploded on the spot. Good. Beautiful, just fight like this. At this moment, many of the soldiers in the base who had been paying attention to the battle situation cheered. Some captains were even a little surprised. Can this V-3 rocket be used like this? But the 2 generals and several commanders remained silent, paying attention to the battle situation. Of the 30 light prism tanks, 3 were destroyed, leaving 27. This did not have a great impact on the light prism tank army. Of course Wang Ling also knew about this situation, and even after taking the initiative to give the Allies a punch, he did not hesitate to fight. While reloading the rockets, those V-3 rocket cars quickly turned around and retreated, as if they were shooting to change places. I have no choice but to run. The range of the V-3 rocket is above that of the prism tank, but its distance is limited. If it can hit the prism tank, it means that it is not too far away from the prism tank. If you stay in a daze at this moment, you are simply seeking death. As for those light prism tanks, because they were not evenly arranged, there was always some distance between them. The 5-shot V-3 rocket only killed 3 of them, but the aftermath of the rocket explosion also destroyed those 3 light prism tanks. The tanks near the tanks shook, and they were immediately attracted to the hatred. But the launchers of those light prism tanks swayed for a while, as if they found that those V-3 rocket cars were not within their range, so they simply gave up the target and followed the other light prism tanks, still moving forward mightily. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 306. After all, it is a tank unit under real-time command by the Allied forces. Naturally, it will not fight with you as soon as it is hit. Their goal is to push across 2 coalition bases. It is impossible to mess up the overall situation just for this harassment. Otherwise, the 2 major coalition bases are no longer so nervous. Although 3 tanks were destroyed, this did not have much substantive impact on the light tank army. Only the tanks that were affected were slightly sluggish for a moment, and then continued to advance with the large army. Taking advantage of this time, the 5 V-3 rocket cars retreated significantly and hid behind the tank corps of the Wolf Squad, waiting for the next attack order. When the V-3 rocket car stopped, the eyes of the spectators in the base naturally focused on the army of light tanks. Under their gaze, these light tanks lined up in irregular formations and came menacingly, but before they broke into the coalition forces in front of the range, it stopped in an open space. After all, it is an army composed of 6 Allied bases. it is inevitable that they will not coordinate well during the march. The front and rear are far apart. If they are not gathered together, the power of the light tank army will be reduced. Therefore, before the general offensive is approaching, it will inevitably stop and regroup. This approach is very common on the battlefield of Red Alert. Would even Wang Ling do this, let alone the Allies? However, Wang Ling's eyes lit up when he saw this. He waved his hand and shouted, "Attention V3 rocket car, cooperate with me, one rocket must kill one for me." To put it bluntly, this is the opportunity Wang Ling has been waiting for. It is difficult for V3 rockets to attack moving targets, and it is easy to miss them if predicted in advance. But when the enemy stops, it will be very lively. Wang Ling then individually assigned targets to the 5 V3 rocket cars. As he gave the fire command, the 5 V3 rocket cars raised their rocket missiles high again. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! As the sound of 5 flames bursting out, 5 huge V3 rockets once again flew high into the sky, drawing a dangerous parabola, and accurately blasted into the group of light prism tanks. Boom! Boom boom boom! Although the prism tank is powerful, its armor and life are too fragile. However, the V3 rocket is extremely powerful. As a result, 5 rockets fell, and 5 explosions were heard on the spot. It was so clear and beautiful that everyone could hear it. The coalition soldiers felt particularly comfortable. But this time, no one called out from the radio. The prism tanks were already approaching. 3 tanks were blasted before, and 5 more tanks were lost this time. There are still 22 tanks left in the light tank army. It can be said that they have been broken to the core, but the power of these 20-odd tanks is enough to push a tank across. Base. The 5 light prism tanks that stopped first were blown up. The rampaging air waves were about to overturn several light prism tanks around them. However, after these light prism tanks stopped, they only shook their launchers and fired. He did not leave the team, but waited for all the other light tanks to be in place before preparing to launch a general attack. However, the reloading speed of the V3 rocket car is relatively slow, and it is too late to launch the second round of rockets. It was about to start a head-on fight, but Wang Ling temporarily patted the body of a Rhino tank next to him, sighed and said, "There are always sacrifices in war, let alone facing more than 20 light prism tanks? Guys, I've wronged you." As he finished speaking, the Rhino tank rushed out without hesitation, galloping at full speed according to the route Wang Ling had planned in advance, and within a moment it broke into the shooting range of the prism tank group. This group of light prismatic tanks is so menacing and domineering that they will stop and blow up an armed mining truck when they encounter it within the range, which shows their fiery style. Now a Rhino tank appeared in the shooting range. This group of light prism tanks was not happy. They paused, then collectively twisted the light prism launchers and hit that Rhino tank. With the strength of the armed mining vehicle, it could only last a few breaths under the bombardment of this group of light tanks. Now, although the number has decreased, its power has not weakened much. This Rhino tank is almost a face-to-face encounter. It took nearly 20 rays of light and was blasted instantly. Although the Rhino tanks persisted for a short time, it took some time for the group of prism tanks to react, change targets, and then launch. During this time, the 5 V3 rockets had been successfully reloaded. Then, another unleveled Rhino tank came forward and held back the group of light tanks for a while at the cost of sacrifice. Taking advantage of this precious time, the 5 V3 rocket cars had re-aimed at their respective targets. Target, 5 rockets took off again, blasting 5 light tanks accurately. By now, the number of prism tanks has dropped sharply to 17, nearly half of them lost. Although the firepower of these light prism tanks combined together is still extremely powerful, compared with the initial 30 tanks, their power has been severely reduced. However, Wang Ling still refused to give up. This time, he directly dispatched an unleveled Apocalypse tank and moved quickly along the outermost edge of the range of the group of light prism tanks. Although the group of light prism tanks shrunk by nearly half, their behavior was still domineering. Now they broke into another coalition tank, so they changed their target again and began to focus fire on the Apocalypse tank. However, the armor and health of the Apocalypse tank are much stronger than that of the Rhino tank. In addition, the number of prism tanks themselves has dropped sharply. Under the circumstances, a concentrated fire bombardment only reduced the Apocalypse tank to residual health. Could not be eliminated in one go. During this time, the 5v3 rocket cars had been successfully loaded again, and then they continued to aim at the light tank and fire 5 rockets without stopping. As a result, the Apocalypse tank that was used as cannon fodder was finally shot, and 5 more prism tanks were killed. Up to now, there are only 12 tanks left in the originally menacing army of light tanks. It finally shrunk to a point where it was bearable. At this time, Wang Ling finally broke out and shouted, almost hysterically, "All the Apocalypse tanks, rush for me. I won't even leave a single light prism tank left, fight, explode these bastards." Can he not be angry? Although the characteristics of the V3 rocket killed a large number of prism tanks, in the process, the Wolf Squad had to send their beloved tanks as cannon fodder to contain the opponent. Although the base has developed greatly during this period, and the Wolf team has also added a lot of tanks, there is a limit to how many more tanks there are. With Wang Ling's stingy temper, how can he not be impatient while watching his tanks being blown up? The group of Apocalypse tanks had already been prepared. As soon as Wang Ling gave the order, they all dispersed and rushed towards the remaining light prism tanks. The firepower of the 12 light prism tanks is also very fierce, but all the elites among them are lost. The remaining group of non-level light prisms cannot destroy an Apocalypse tank in a short time. However, this group of Apocalypse is still scattered, allowing these light prisms to be destroyed. The tank's best line attack also failed. As a result, the desperate bombardment only reduced the Apocalypse tank at the front to residual health. However, at this time, the large force of Apocalypse tanks had already broken into their vicinity. Ever since, a one-sided massacre began. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 307. Although the Prism tank is strong, it is extremely vulnerable to beatings due to its limited armor and life, and is very taboo about being approached by enemies. But now, not only are the enemies approaching, but also all the Apocalypse tanks in the Wolf team, including 3 elite-level powerful tanks. How about playing with a hammer? Rumble. Rumble. All the Apocalypse tanks were impatient. They opened fire as soon as they got close. The dense artillery fire came down, which was mixed with a large number of explosive shells. They bombarded the light tanks, and one after another exploded. Almost no resistance at all. However, they seemed to know that the situation was over and they could not complete the mission. The remaining light tanks became violent before they died, focusing their fire to destroy the Apocalypse tank with remaining health, and even used a backrest before they died. Rumble. Click. As the last blast of gunfire came out, the last light prism tank that resisted was also blown up. At this point, the Allied forces' aggressive action to destroy the 2 major coalition bases has officially failed. Success. Ha 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 ha, Wolf Squad, I love you so much. Guys, you did a great job. 30 light tanks were killed like this. Damn it, these damn allies still want to bite us, they must break their teeth. Oh. 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 Dot. With the victory of the blocking battle, all the soldiers in the base became excited and cheered, feeling excited about surviving the disaster. In the command post, the commander and several deputies also breathed a sigh of relief. Major General Li Wiki did not hesitate to praise Wang Ling. How many more surprises can Wang Ling give people? 30 prism tanks, but in the end he only used 2 Rhino tanks and 2 Apocalypse tanks to give them all change it. Zhao Mingwang laughed and analyzed from the side, Wang Ling has so many clever ideas when it comes to fighting. But it's a coincidence that the main force of this blockade, the V3 rocket, was just produced and distributed yesterday. For the Wolf team, this is used now, and it is very useful in turning the tide. Otherwise, without this V3 rocket, a clever woman will be unable to make a meal without rice. Wang Ling is afraid that he will be embarrassed, and a fierce battle is inevitable. Luo Wei, how about it? Are you still complaining about producing so many V3 rockets and allocating them to the Wolf squad? Rovitsky's face turned red and he was speechless for a moment. When King Xiaoping asked for instructions to make 5 V3 rockets and distribute them to the Wolf squad, this guy was naturally opposed to it. For no other reason than his old habit of being picky and complaining, it was Major General Li Wiki who finally made the decision and let him shut up. But this guy was smart and quickly changed the topic. Ahem, those are just trivial matters, not worth mentioning. But having said that, Wang Ling led the team to destroy all the light tanks, which is a great achievement. That's natural. Ha 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 ha. While the 3 major generals Li Wiki were talking, General Luo Er was also laughing in the number 16 base command post. This battle was beautiful. Wang Ling is so shady, but I like it. Pass the order, we also need to make at least 5 V3 rocket cars at our base. If the Allies dare to invade in the future, let me blast them like this when we assemble. Every inch is stronger and every inch is stronger. Damn it, I learned the lesson today. Yes. A deputy took the order and immediately went to deliver the order, but General Luo Er asked another person, did you win over this Wang Ling during this time? The deputy was a bit dumbfounded, General, it's too late, it's hard to win over. Besides, we are guarding the city with General Li and the others. No matter which base Captain Wang Ling is at, he will fight in the same way. Then how can it be the same? The difference in credit is too big. We have to contact each other and figure out what to do. Are these damned brats in a hurry? General Luo Er is not satisfied yet and wants to pry into the corner. But before he could finish his words, he accidentally glanced at the electronic map and was immediately startled. In the electronic map, there were 4 Allied bases where the Prism tanks had just been dispatched, and a large number of troops were dispatched from them. Large blue light spots flashed on the electronic map, obviously heading towards their city. Pulling in the map and looking at the electronic video, it turns out that the Allied forces dispatched a large number of rocket pilots this time. This time, the 6 bases of the Allied forces united and dispatched the big killer weapon of the Prism tank, just to destroy these 2 bases in one go. However, they did not expect that Wang Ling, a pervert, would be destroyed at a very small cost. It killed all their light tanks and really scared them. 2 of the bases chose to be patient, but the other 4 each sent out 20 rocket pilots, relying on their superior mobility to attack the coalition's tank troops. But Lao Luo, the food delivery guy, is here, ready to pick up the guests. As soon as General Luo Er discovered the enemy's movements, General Li Wiki sent a radio message. That's right, a total of 80 rocket pilots fell into their mouths as a retaliatory action at the Allied base, and they turned out to be food delivery men. There's nothing we can do about it. The Allies have really shot themselves in the foot this time. The air raids carried out some time ago have made these 2 bases particularly sensitive, especially to the air forces. During this period, they can produce a number of anti-aircraft tracked vehicles were purchased, specifically designed to respond to the large-scale fighter airstrikes that night. Relying on the garrison of these anti-aircraft tracked vehicles, Allied fighter jets can no longer even break into the city. Fighters have been targeted, but what about rocket pilots? You know, the damage of an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle to infantry is much higher than that of a mecha. It is several times more difficult for 80 rocket pilots to break through the defense line of an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle than a fighter jet. What's more, even if there is a breakthrough, there will still be a large number of anti-aircraft guns inside the base waiting. I know. Hee hee, these brats from the Allied forces were so lazy with their air raids some time ago. It's time for them to taste the bitter consequences this time. General Luo smiled sinisterly. Afterwards, the two commanders hurriedly ordered to mobilize the troops in the city and return to their original garrison positions. They withdrew all the infantry and tanks and put the anti-aircraft crawlers at the front. To be on the safe side, they even urged the armed forces working in the field to mine. The minecart sped up a bit, and rushed back to the base before it was fully loaded, saving a group of rocket pilots from attacking the minecart. After all deployments were completed, it was time to wait for the Allied forces to approach. After all, the rocket pilots are air troops, and their speed is much faster than the ground troops. The two bases did not wait too long. In the dark night, they saw the dense firelight on the horizon, which was the light emitted by the rocket pilots when they were flying. Judging from their posture, it seems that they are enough to surround the entire city. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 308. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. As time goes by, the group of light spots on the horizon are getting closer and closer to the city. When they get close to a certain extent, the unique flight suits of the rocket pilots can be seen clearly in the dark night. Among the defending troops, Wang Ling was also an elite anti-aircraft infantryman after all, so he was naturally at the forefront. Along with the anti-aircraft crawlers, he also saw those rocket pilots. To be honest, since Wang Ling entered the world of Red Alert, this was the first time he saw 80 rocket pilots launching a surprise attack together. They flew in the air with the help of rockets and were evenly distributed. It was very eye-catching and appeared very impressive. However, that's what fighting is all about. This group of rocket pilots is very powerful, but the coalition forces are not bad either. On the edge of the city, many anti-aircraft crawler vehicles are lined up. Looking at it, it looks like a steel Great Wall. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Originally, one rocket pilot did not make much noise when flying, but when 80 of them were put together, the sound of the rocket jets was a bit alarming, and the closer the distance, the more obvious the sound became. When the vanguard of this group of rocket pilots rushed into the firing range in advance, Wang Ling finally couldn't wait any longer. He roared out fire and took the lead in bombarding with the barrel of the gun. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. As Wang Ling and the Wolf Squad opened fire, the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles on other lines of defense also opened fire, focusing on the rocket pilots in the air. The dense shelling sounded constantly, as if it was like setting off firecrackers in the air, but the sound was not right. The ground-to-air range is usually very long, much longer than the air-to-enemy range of rocket pilots. The rocket pilots at the front were bombarded and were a little dazed for a while, but as the large swaths of rocket pilots, the fall of the enemy and the subsequent arrival of large forces emboldened this group of rocket pilots, and they even rushed forward to face the bombardment of the anti-aircraft crawler vehicles. The cost of doing this is naturally that large swaths of flying soldiers will fall, just like dumplings collectively. Anti-aircraft tracked vehicles are already very lethal to infantry, not to mention that these tracked vehicles also contain many 3-star elites. When the group of rocket pilots rushed above them despite the artillery fire, their number had been reduced by half. The remaining half collectively sprayed fire snakes at the anti-aircraft crawler vehicles, trying to use these forces to force an attack. However, to do so is to put it bluntly, it is just a moth chasing a flame. Not long after the two sides fought, all the remaining rocket pilots were shot down. However, on the other hand, the coalition forces only destroyed the extremely limited 4 rockets. That's all. There are even some tracked vehicles that have accumulated a lot of experience and have taken this opportunity to be directly promoted to the elite level. This sudden attack and blocking battle started fiercely, but ended abruptly. Ha ha ha, it's so good, so good. In the command post, General Luo burst into laughter. General Li Wiki also had a rare moment of arrogance. The Allies are still too stingy, they only have 80 rocket pilots. This is not enough to fight. Isn't this enough? General, it's almost done. The Allies should feel very distressed this time, King Xiaoping gloated from the sidelines. Isn't it? On the Allied side, there were roars coming from the 4 bases where troops had just been dispatched, and they were obviously very angry. The total price of a rocket pilot, all the equipment, and the cost of training is higher than the cost of an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle. But just now, all 80 of their rocket pilots were shot down, but in the end they only killed 4 anti-aircraft crawlers. Can this not make them angry? However, after this period of extreme anger, the Allied commanders all calmed down. Tonight's attack, whether it was light prism tanks or rocket pilots, was large-scale, especially the light prism tanks, which had the firepower to overwhelm several bases. However, the 2 coalition bases used to attack the city were only replaced with a few of their extremely limited tanks. This contrast really scares them. On the surface, these 2 bases are not much different from other coalition bases, but in fact they are an extremely difficult nut to crack. Until now, they have been kicking the iron plate every time. In response, it was a situation of blood loss. Over time, they no longer even wanted to actively provoke these 2 bases. Outside the city, as all the rocket pilots were shot down, many soldiers cheered for a while. As one of the blocking forces, Wang Ling was stunned now, because with the end of this blocking battle, his air defense infantry level has been officially promoted to the 5-star special forces level. Speaking of which, it is really difficult to upgrade this air defense infantry unit, and it is too restrictive. Wang Ling's conversion to anti-aircraft infantry has taken quite a while since he reached the elite level. During this period, whenever the opportunity is right, he will pick up the barrel and compete for experience. Until now, he has grabbed a lot in the blocking battle. Just now, he relied on the power of elite anti-aircraft infantry to successfully shoot down 4 rocket pilots. Finally, he was promoted naturally. Just like the previous upgrades, Wang Ling's body was slightly strengthened after being promoted to a 5-star special forces soldier. His mind also received a special experience book, and even the barrel of the gun on his shoulder was greatly strengthened. Stand up. This process sounds complicated, but in fact it does not take much time to do it together. Wang Ling has long been accustomed to this feeling of promotion and does not feel any discomfort. After the promotion was completed, Wang Ling looked at the barrel on his shoulder, feeling filled with pride and inexplicable excitement. The cheers of the other soldiers had died down one after another, but Wang Ling was restless. He carried the barrel of the gun and left the team alone. He found a dilapidated building in the city. After estimating the distance, he fired the gun directly. The unleveled anti-aircraft infantry is really useless. It fires 1 shell at a time, and its speed is extremely slow and its power is limited. When it is a 1-star veteran, it gradually speeds up its firing speed. When it comes to the 3-star elite level, it is a leapfrog increase. The range is increased, the power is enhanced, the rate of fire is accelerated, and it can even fire 2 shells at a time. The overall combat effectiveness is not even worse than an unrated anti-aircraft tracked vehicle. The strengthening of the 5-star special forces is also carried out on this basis. The range is longer, the power is stronger, and the speed is faster. The number of shells that can be fired at a time has even reached 3. The overall power can even stabilize an elite anti-aircraft tracked vehicle. The building that was bombarded was also very unlucky and became Wang Ling's first target for a test after being promoted. Although the damage of the anti-aircraft infantry to the building is very limited, the attack frequency is too high. With high attack speed and 3 consecutive shots each time, the building with low health cannot hold on for long and is defeated by Wang Ling. One person blasts the whole thing. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 309. Boom. Under Wang Ling's constant bombardment, the building, which was already full of blood, finally exploded. The flying debris seemed to symbolize the cry of the building. But at this time, Wang Ling couldn't hold back and laughed for a while. The enhanced weapons are indeed powerful. He is now even confident that if 4 allied invader fighter jets fly together, he can defeat half of them with just one person. The other troops in the city were relaxing after cheering after the blocking battle was over. Suddenly they heard an explosion, and they were instantly shocked. After checking, they found out that Wang Ling was testing the cannon, and they were all dumbfounded. After all, they couldn't see Wang Ling's new level, and they didn't understand Wang Ling's current excitement. As for the command post, Major General Li Wiki and his 2 deputies were now a little shocked. Rovitsky even twitched his lips and asked, "Can anti-aircraft infantry be so strong? This is a bit exaggerated." Unlike others, although the 3 of them did not know Wang Ling's new level, they had just witnessed Wang Ling's changes with their own eyes. The enhanced destructive power of the unit made them feel incredible. King Xiaoping also nodded fiercely, rarely agreeing with his point of view. But Major General Li Wiki shook his head with a smile and said, "Wang Ling may not be able to do things that other anti-aircraft infantry can't do. This guy always seems to like to break some conventions. Have you ever seen any magnetic blast infantry that can be stronger than him, to that extent?" Xiaoping Wang and Rovitsky glanced at each other, both of them dumbfounded. In any case, 2 consecutive blocking battles tonight are over now. After observing the electronic map, the Allies have suffered 2 defeats in a row. It seems that they do not plan to use troops here again. Overall, they are stable. Down. On the contrary, several coalition bases organized another wave of attacks at night. They are now running on the road. However, the Allies seem to have taken precautions. Outside the dark area of the crack generator of the coalition base, there are shadowy energy. Seeing many troops gathering, they are obviously ready to deal with it. It is obviously another tug of war, which is not surprising. It was already midnight when the Allied forces attacked. After waiting and fighting for so long, a lot of time had passed. In 2 hours at most, it would be almost done. However, after being tense for so long, many soldiers in the city were also a little tired, so they quickly arranged the remaining time so that the soldiers could take turns to rest. The Allied forces are not night owls and do not have that much energy. After the night attack, they have finally sent out no more troops to harass them. Of course, even if there is a chance to send troops, those bases no longer want to send troops to the city. The commanders here simply do not follow common sense and it is really difficult to fight. Taking advantage of this convenience, Wang Ling and the others finally rested peacefully until dawn. After morning exercise and breakfast, Wang Ling returned to the Wolf Team station and checked the electronic map as a habit. The first thing we looked at was the direction of the Allied forces. On the whole, there was not much movement. However, on today's battlefield, there were 3 more Allied base vehicles, leading a large number of troops to the decisive battlefield. One of them had already stopped in a field. In the swamp area, a piece of hard ground was selected and a command post was deployed. That location was too far away from Allied base number 15, and very close to 2 powerful Allied bases on both sides. Wang Ling observed it for a moment and then shook his head. This location was not surprising. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh. The Allies had added 3 more bases. This decisive battle was becoming more and more stalemate and becoming more and more difficult to fight. After looking at the direction of the Allied forces, Wang Ling turned to check the Allied forces camp. In the rear area of the coalition forces, two coalition base vehicles also arrived outside the map, following the large-scale troops, but they had not yet reached the designated location. The Allied forces are increasing their troops, and victorious bases are constantly arriving, so why not the coalition forces? According to the style of play of both sides, this decisive battle may not have a result. Seeing this, Wang Ling originally planned to give up checking, but before exiting the electronic map, he accidentally glanced at the number 1 coalition base on the map, which was far away from the city, and his eyes suddenly widened. Because, in this base, the roof of the tank factory was completely opened, and a huge thing slowly flew out from it. This behemoth is an airship, huge in size, even as long as a tank factory. It has a streamlined shape like a rugby ball, with a huge cannon projectile port placed below, and huge and fierce eyes carved in front. There are also sharp shark-like teeth painted on the bottom, which look very ferocious and terrifying. Isn't this look the most powerful weapon in the coalition's arsenal, the Kirov airship known as the God of Death in the air? The decisive battle has been going on for so long. Wang Ling has never seen a trace of this thing before. Today, he finally succeeded in seeing one. Although he was just watching it from the electronic video, Wang Ling felt a little excited in his heart. Wang Ling was really impressed by the power of this thing. If the Allied forces were to be invaded by it into their airspace, it would be almost a disaster. Unless they had a very powerful air defense force, they would be far away from destruction. Far. The title of the God of Death in the air is not for nothing. The coalition forces have begun to produce this kind of killer weapon, and there may be some changes in the stalemate battlefield. However, Wang Ling is not in a hurry. According to the habits of the alliance forces in the game, these ships usually send out 3 ships at a time to directly decapitate the allies. Now only one ship has appeared, which is still far from enough. Brother Zhao, General. After exiting the electronic video, Wang Ling took a deep breath and contacted the command post. What's wrong, Wang Ling? King Xiaoping responded. Wang Ling asked, the production of Kirov airships has begun at base number 1. Do we also have this kind of technology here? This time, it was General Li Wiki's turn to be surprised. You actually recognize the Kirov airship? I don't know where you knew this from. I feel a little ashamed. Now that we have entered the battlefield of the decisive battle, some of the technologies of the coalition forces is naturally universal. Of course we also have the technology of the Kirov airship. Oh, Wang Ling raised his eyebrows, a little excited. But General Li Wiki then came to a turning point. This thing is very difficult to make, and it costs a lot of money. Our current technology is not yet in place, and we are busy with basic defense construction. It is not time to build this kilo. The husband's empty boat is here. Wang Ling's face darkened slightly. This is a pity. Then when can we build it? At least, when we complete the construction, we will have sufficient self-protection capabilities, and the funding problem will also need to be solved. These days, we have accelerated the construction progress. Although the armed mine trucks are mining non-stop, the funds are still in short supply. Yes, these will take time to resolve. Major General Li Wiki explained patiently that if it were asked by other personnel, it was not certain whether he would ignore it, but for Wang Ling, he also took special care of him. After saying this, Major General Li Wiki laughed and changed the subject. We are still some distance from the Kirov airship. Don't think too much about it now. Look at the sea. Our dock should be completed by now. Buzz. As luck would have it, as soon as Major General Li Wiki finished speaking, an alarm sounded inside the base that he was under attack. Wang Linggang quickly checked the electronic map and found out that the newly built dock was attacked. Tomorrow is Double 11, comrades. Please take it easy and don't get distracted when buying things. By the way, Please take care of the feelings of Singles Day people. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 310. Coastal areas in urban areas are the best choice for building a navy. When the coalition bases number 15 and number 16 gradually improve their ground forces, they naturally aim at the development of the navy. The first step in developing the navy is naturally to establish a shipyard on the sea. This is also the main construction direction of the two bases in the past few days in addition to ground defense. As of today, of the two shipyards, the one on the 15th has just been successfully constructed, while the one on the 16th is still under construction. Now, the problem lies in the newly built dock on the 15th. Hearing the base's siren, everyone in the entire base was agitated, and Wang Ling was no exception. After realizing that he was attacked by the enemy, Wang Ling hurriedly checked the electronic map. On the electronic map, he saw an enemy attack box mark directly circled to the dock. When he took a closer look, there was no sign on the electronic map. Detect any trace of enemy troops. However, the enemy attack was still continuing. Wang Ling took a closer look and found that not far from the dock, there were more than 10 blue waves visible to the naked eye, which continued to hit the dock. In such a short time, nearly a quarter of the dock's health has been destroyed. Moreover, every time these blue fluctuations are transmitted, a large number of sharp sounds can be heard in the electronic map, which sound like the cry of some kind of animal. Observing this, Wang Ling, as a player, already understood what was going on. This was a pod of dolphins attacking. The Allied naval forces have specially trained a type of dolphin as a combat unit. They usually hide deep under the sea surface. Neither radar signals nor satellite signals can be detected. They are extremely concealed and often appear as sneak attacks. Its attack method is an enhanced sonar attack. Each attack can make a sharp chirping sound, and obvious blue fluctuations can be seen on the electronic map. The Allied forces have obviously taken longer to develop their navy on this decisive battlefield than the Allied forces. Many naval units have already been constructed and trained. Like the dozen or so dolphins now, they were obviously dispatched by the Allied forces long ago and hidden on the 15th and 10th near the coastline of number 6. As soon as the dock is completed, the attack will begin. As for the base, they naturally discovered the accident site at a glance, learned that something happened at the shipyard, and quickly ordered engineers from the bug branch to come and repair it. But other than that, there was nothing I could do for a while, and I didn't even know what was attacking. In a hurry, Rovitsky hurriedly checked the detailed information distributed by the General Headquarters, trying to find the culprit that caused the current scene. After all, they had never participated in a naval battle before, so they were really blinded by the scene. However, King Xiaoping was so anxious that he clapped his hands and shouted, "Let's check something else. There is a Bai Xiaotong in our base. Wouldn't it be faster to just ask him?" "Yes, Wang Ling." Major General Li Wiki, who was in a hurry, his eyes lit up, and he quickly contacted him. "Wang Ling, Wang Ling. What is attacking our dock?" After Wang Ling joined the battlefield, his familiarity with the enemies and our troops really surprised the commanders and deputies. Now that they are facing such a problem, the ready-made Bai Xiaotong is not in vain. There is no need for Wang Ling to avoid anything. After all, this is a game world created specifically for him. It would be outrageous for him to avoid even these basic military information. "General, these are the Allied dolphins attacking us dockyard." Later, Wang Ling spent some time telling General Li Wiki the news about dolphins in his memory. After listening, Xiaoping Wang specifically poked Rovitsky and winked, "Are you convinced?" Rovitsky was speechless for a moment and couldn't speak. With his temperament, it was really hard for him to admit it. General Li Wiki hurriedly asked, "You know what is attacking us, so how can we respond?" This time, Wang Ling rarely showed a troubled look. "General, to tell you the truth, although I know the naval arms of the Allied forces, I am really not good at naval warfare. Moreover, our dock has just been built and we don't have any naval forces. Well, I don't have any good ideas for the time being. This is not Wang Ling deliberately hiding his clumsiness. When playing the game, he focused on land battles, and occasionally there were some air battles. As for naval battles, there were very few, and of course he had no experience. You don't even know how to deal with it? Then our dock was not built in vain. General Li Wiki was obviously a little impatient. Wang Ling pursed his lips and racked his brains for a while. He accidentally saw the V3 rocket of the Wolf team, and suddenly his eyes lit up. General, I think I have an idea. V3 rocket, you can try to attack by force. Okay, hurry up, while there is still time, while the engineering troops are making forced repairs, fight back quickly. General Li Wiki saw hope and hurriedly urged. Wang Ling did not dare to delay, and quickly took the 5 V3 rocket cars of the Wolf team and rushed towards the city's coastline. The station of the Wolf team was not too far from the coastline, but the city was too big and the speed of the V3 rocket car was too slow. It took a lot of time to get there. Fortunately, while the dolphins were attacking, the engineers were also forcibly repairing it. They were losing blood while increasing it, so it could last for a while. However, this won't last long. As of now, the dock of Base 15 only has about 1/3 of its health. If it is not controlled, the group of dolphins may turn upside down. Seeing this scene, Wang Ling did not dare to waste any more time and quickly set the coordinate points for each V3 rocket car to attack by force. This coordinate point is easy to find. Although this group of dolphins can be hidden under radar, the sonar attack it launches when attacking can reveal its general location. Just follow this location and hit it. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Now that they had the attack coordinates, the 5 V3 rocket cars immediately started working. The huge rockets stood high and then ignited. As the sound of several flame jets came out, 5 rockets shot into the sky. 5 standard parabolas were left behind, accurately hitting the location marked by Wang Ling. It's amazing to say that these 5 rockets really hit those dolphins. The 5 dolphins were immediately exposed to the radar signal of the coalition forces, and they died as soon as they were exposed, and 5 screams were heard one after another. Dolphins are a stealthy allied naval force with many magical uses. However, they are still an animal body and are too small in size. Their armor is limited and their lifespan is not much better than that of ordinary dolphins. The V3 rocket is extremely powerful and can be fired at once. Next, you can naturally kill a dolphin successfully. 11. How is everyone's results? Anyway, I didn't participate, and I didn't spend a dime except for advertisements popping up from time to time on WPS and computer pages, and my foot happened to be injured again not long ago. It seemed like nothing was the same as usual. The difference as for singles day, I've long been used to it.